Hey, welcome everybody. This is Suze Maclaine Pont from the Suze Maclaine Pont Show, and welcome to the Spanglish World Networks on Zingo TV channel 250 and 251. Please remember to download both the Zingo TV app on the respective app stores on iOS and Android devices. And while you download, make sure to rate and leave a comment. The app is free. Zingo TV is also available on Google Chromecast, Amazon Fire and Fire TV sticks, Roku and Roku sticks, also on all smart TVs 2016 forward. So, welcome. I'm Suze Maclaine Pont. If you have been watching before, you know that I'm a trauma therapist and a business coach, and I combine both, teaching people how to show up more fully in who they are meant to be in life, in their business. And now the interesting thing is today I'm going to talk with you about communication and trauma. I invited my husband to have a conversation together around communication and trauma. Guess what happens? For some reason, he wasn't able to join us live, and he is still working on that. So, when it comes to communication, there are a lot of things that get sparked so easily. And so often we think, well, this is just, oh, Yakko is here. Ah, okay. I don't see Yakko. That's even more interesting, right? So I'm talking about he wasn't able to be here. I can't see him yet. So now we have to get him so that I can also see his pretty face. Um, so let's see if we can bring him on because when it comes to communication and trauma, there are so many layers and there are so many things. And there he is. Now, the first thing I wanted to do before I introduce him is just elaborate a little bit more on what I just said because when these things happen, right, it seems like it's just a computer bug. Well, you know what? I can't help it. Well, this just happened and it's all right. It is what it is. And we can respond calmly or we can respond disruptive. The interesting thing is these little things around communication can spark such big traumas. They can spark such big events like we'll take it personally, right? What happens? And Yucko used to be very good at it. Today he takes it a lot less personal because today he just thinks, you know what, it is what it is. I'll move to the kitchen and I'll be fine. But a few years ago, he would make this around him being that way. So we've learned a lot when it comes to communication. And over the course of the next 50 minutes, 45 minutes now, I think, we're going to talk about these layers. We have not prepared this. You're just going to listen to Yeko and me talking about communication, how that sparks trauma. First, let's introduce Yeko. Yeko is my husband. He's my business partner. We work together. We're actually in the same house now, but I'm sitting in one room. He's sitting in the kitchen due to all kinds of communication problems that he had. Yeko, welcome here. Share a little
Hi.
bit about yourself.
Yeah. So I'm busy with the. So yeah. Okay. We had some people working here in the building, and they came just when we started. So I had to move and to answer some questions. But now I'm here, and I'm glad that things managed it well now. And as Susie said, I would have been panicking if something went wrong because something going wrong was really a real big thing for me, and still there can be stress, there can be anxiousness, there can be all kind of emotions around it, but it's less as a losing everything in life. It could feel like going down the drain when something went wrong while I was thinking it was the most important thing in the world. But it isn't about life or death, it's just some technical problems to be solved. So I guess I made a quite a journey to come here that I'm more relaxed about things going as they go. I see that the light is still not burning, so that I'm in the dark spot here. But so in a moment I will fix that.
If you just change your face viewing the window, it's fixed. That's all you need to do. Just sit in my chair at the kitchen table, and then you'll be fine.
Yeah.
It's just get the sunlight on your face. Okay. It's actually really interesting if we look at it, right? Because let's dive a little bit into things happening the way they just did, because it can so often seem like if I just fix this and that, if I just fix these two things, then everything is perfect and then I'm fine. But when it comes to communication, we need to be fine before we fix the thing. Now, this is a very, very subtle layer because now we're just talking about a little thing, right? A little thing around um, if I have these things in place, then I'm fine around technology and showing up on a podcast. But we can make all of our life into a stack of things where we will let the stack of things decide how we feel. And communication can be the same thing. If the communication flows well, then I will feel fine. But if the other person gets triggered or angry or responds or whatever, we will allow our own emotions to be determined by what the other person is feeling instead of bringing our beautiful emotions into the conversation. Now, the interesting thing is, this is an easy thing, right? We can talk about, yeah, we need to have a better attitude or a better mindset. The problem with trauma is that it's not about your mindset or your attitude. It's about a sudden nervous system overwhelm that starts to overtake you that you feel you cannot do anything about. And it doesn't feel like a mindset fuck up. It feels like this is who I am. This is who I'm made of. I can't help this. This is not something I'm in control of. And that's very different from your mindset.
It's even not really about thinking about it, because there's so much. I know that there can be so much emotion just right then. It's really not. It's faster than thinking. It's overwhelming. So there's no way you could think out of it. That's how I remember it. And sometimes and now this moment, it almost went like this again. So there is some more space in me to allow these emotions, and to see that they're not that serious. So, and that's funny. I was listening to a podcast about Stoic philosophy, and that's really about mindset. So if
For our
you
listeners, could you name an example of a stoic?
uh, Seneca or Marcus Aurelius,
Okay.
yeah. And that was really about, you can, if you do the right, if you have the right convictions, then you don't have to allow yourself to feel all the emotions that coming up. Like, you can control it,
Ah,
and that's real different from knowing that it's part of your body, which is there, and cause these big amount of emotions.
it's interesting because in a this is exactly where we're hitting the point of the difference between mindset and trauma,
Yep.
between a belief problem, which we can easily fix on a mindset level, and there's space for that too, or a trauma overtaking us. The difference between understanding your attitude or creating an attitude or a what I call shame rage explosion, completely like there is an alien in your body who takes over. Is that a kind of a description you would give?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really an alien, and it's even you can call it a demon because it's
Mm,
really ugly and stressed out, not controllable. It's
yeah.
yeah,
And that makes us even more ashamed of the
yeah,
situation because our mind is not asleep at that point. So our mind will say, get a grip on yourself. What's happening? And you can't, and you don't know what to do. And then there's this suppression of your energy and there's shame about who you are. And I can remember when I had these kinds of things and I had other things. I didn't necessarily have this going on a lot because I just cut myself off of communicating with people, and I did everything alone. I wasn't that well a communicator 25 years ago. So then I would just be fine on my own as long as I didn't have to interact with a whole lot of people. So I didn't have these explosions that much. But what I wanted to say about it was interesting. I lost my own train of thought. Was yeah. So the shame of I don't want people to judge me based on this on the basis of this little thing. So then I would make myself bad, almost like drinking some poison, punishing myself, thinking that if I can prove that I can punish myself, then they won't have to be angry at me. Something like that. Can you
yeah.
relate to that?
I and I can feel okay. You better shoot me now.
Yeah,
So I'm not worth um, living here because I'm so stupid and I better not here anymore. Yeah,
yeah.
at the
And the
moment.
interesting, yeah, and the interesting thing is that mostly people around you will say, "Come on, it's just a computer. Who cares? It's just a thing." Yeah, and your mind knows that. That's exactly what's making it worse because everything everybody will say in that moment is what you also know, and you can't access that part of your hard disk. So they're stating the obvious that you don't have access to, which probably makes that feeling of shoot me now worse, right? What happens inside of you when people, and I was the first one to do these things, well, not the first one, but I was I was a good person to say, come on, get a grip. How old are you? What did that make you feel like?
Yeah, it's so much at one time. There's so much happening just in that moment, and also in the moments just after. And so the first reaction is total chaos and helplessness, and then there's self-destructive thoughts and emotions, and then after somebody enters, or then there's shame. Yeah. So
Yeah,
there are more stages, and um, yeah, also the shame is something. So it's already shameful for myself. So let go that there's somebody else
yeah,
to reckon on of yeah to deal with at the moment. Yeah.
yeah. And this is interesting because we're now just talking about you being in a situation where tech goes away that you didn't think it would, and then that can spark these triggers. I'm pretty sure that everybody can relate to this, right? For me, it happens in different things. For me, it happens when I'm just playing around doing my own thing and somebody calls me out on You promised to do this today. I'm like, I gave myself a 5 minute break. And it always happens in the moments where I give myself a little bit of a break or pause. And I think, hey, you know what? I would really like to take a weekend off. And then something happens that proves to me that, you see, you can't do that. And then I will get into these emotions. I've seen other people get into these emotions about other things, right? About not living up to responsibilities. A dear friend of mine gets in this state if she forgot to buy groceries. The interesting thing is, if we look at the list of solutions, really simple, guys, go out for dinner that evening. Um, just tell somebody, hey, I'm so sorry, I forgot about you. I'll get back to you on Monday. It's not about the solutions. It's never about these solutions. And we'll get into other examples in a moment as well, because this is just one layer of communication around trauma, right? There are different kinds of layers because just in a conversation, other things can happen as well. The interesting thing is what I want to distill right now is that communication is hard enough as it is. But when it's triggering overwhelm to a degree that it grows outside of your window of tolerance, and I want the listeners to look at the window of tolerance like a barometer setting, right? A barometer, I mean a thermostat setting. So we have a thermostat in our home, right? And this is the thermostat setting. And when the temperature goes up, over the upper barrier, it starts to cool down. And when it goes underneath the lowest barrier, it starts to heat up. And a thermostat operates within these two barriers. But when it's broken, it either continues to heat or it never starts heating. When it comes to trauma, we have also a window of tolerance. And if we stay in that window of tolerance, we'll be fine. Now, most of us are very good at saying, these are my boundaries. I need to stay within these boundaries. And then we start building walls around us saying, I need this, I need that. And if have all these things in place, then I can maintain myself within these boundaries. And I would say, I didn't study this, but I would say for 80% of our time, or maybe 90%, depends a little bit on who you are, we can create a life within those boundaries. Those boundaries are often a certain layer of our bank account, a certain level of living, a certain amount of food on the table, understanding what our relationship is going to be like, a certain amount of predictability. Nothing wrong with it. It keeps us within these boundaries. The problems start rising when these boundaries are broken. So when the overwhelm breaks out of that window of tolerance. And the interesting thing is, if it goes 1 millimeter out of that barrier, then the trauma vortex starts to catch it. And then there is a vortex of stimuli that is a residue of past trauma. Not that in the moment the event is traumatizing, because if in the moment the event would cause trauma, it'd be a whole different thing. That's not what we're talking about here. Of course, communication can also create trauma, but what we're talking about now is when in normal everyday communication with objects, communication with people, trauma is hit. What happens is that the trauma vortex of the past starts spiraling us. And that is a force that we need to work with. And we can't say, you're bad, you shouldn't have done it, because we can't help it. What needs to happen in that moment is that we need to create a bigger window of tolerance, but we can't do that in that moment if we don't know how. What would you say? Can you relate to this? That what I just explained?
No, what I was thinking of asking myself, does the trauma causes that the boundaries are more near each other, so that it's a smaller um, frame, a smaller space
That's
to
interesting. That's interesting. I'm not qualified to answer that question, but I will. So I'm curious if any listeners have other ideas around it. I would love to know because I
Because maybe the triggers are more close. You're because
well, there's
being
two
triggered.
things.
Hmm.
There's two things. We have you could also see it like a channel, right? Like a rain pipe. Now,
Mhm.
if the rain pipe has really thick walls, we'll be fine. So if we've built really thick walls around our heart, we could perfectly stay within those boundaries easily. There's a problem with that too. We'll talk about that in a minute. Remind me if I forget. But we can stay within these boundaries if we have really thick walls. I'm not so sure that's a good idea, though. The problem with early childhood trauma specifically, but also with PTSD caused by war or caused by rape or caused by abuse or caused by anything of a shock or even a car accident, right? Is that the barrier is too thin or even broken. So in that case, we call ourselves overly sensitive, meaning that I don't know what to do if I hit that barrier. So then we say, I'm overly sensitive or I'm highly sensitive. I think everybody is highly sensitive. Now, if there is a break in the barrier, we will continuously, life will almost instantly loop us out of that window of tolerance. Because if there is a break in the barrier, a falling leaf or a harsh sound will get us there. If the boundary is very thick and the wall is very thick, it will be a little bit harder to be triggered. Both are problematic though, because if we want to live life from a place of expectation and a place of beauty and wonder and awe, and if we want to have the full experience of who we are meant to be and who we could be in this life, then we need to let go of all the images of what feels safe. Now, if you were listening to this, you can see my hands. I'm making the bunny ear quotation marks right now with my hands. So, in order to feel safe, in order to live fully, we can't always brace ourselves trying to feel safe while we're living because life is to a certain degree one damn thing after the other. But trauma is the same damn thing every single time all over again. Now, if we want the full beauty of life, we need to let go of our expectations of it because we want to continuously explore, taste, see. By the way, a lot of people tell me, no, I'm not like that. I like stability. I like safety. I get that. We all like a little bit of stability and safety. We need a safe boundary within which we want to explore. But if somebody really only wants the same thing every single time, then we're also saying no to the experience of life. Now, everybody has a window of tolerance when it comes to that, too. That's a different window of tolerance. It's a window of safety, I would say, right? We need certain things in place. Like, I always want to sit in the same chair at the kitchen table, and I want the same kind of plate. I want certain things to be in place. I want the kitchen to be clean when I come downstairs. We have certain things um, that will allow us to expand ourselves a little bit so that we can surrender into life. Soldiers do this really beautifully. They always make their bed. And my grandfather was that they have strict disciplines, right? If there's one fold in your bed sheets, you get detention, for instance. My grandfather was a lieutenant colonel in the Dutch army, and he would always tell me, and I would always ask him, but what's the problem with the one dent in my bed sheets? And he would say, the problem is that you need certain things to be predictable because otherwise you cannot open yourself for the unpredictability. You need certain things to be in place because when you get back home from the battlefield where it's chaos and friends are shot and shit happens, then at least you know one thing will be the way you expected it to be. Now, when soldiers talk about make your bed, polish your shoes, have these things in place, this is what my grandfather was talking about. Maybe if you know soldiers, they have different things in place, but my grandfather taught me these things. So, yes, certain things we need in place, but we can't have everything in place all the time because then we're not opening up for the awe in life, for God. And whether you like the word God or not, I'm not talking about a religious sense of God. Well, maybe I'm not talking about a church religious, organized religion sense of God. I'm talking about a sense of the divine from a place of the wonder of life that we're here to explore, that we're here to understand, that we're here to investigate. What does it mean for me? And we need
Uh,
both. Go
I've
ahead.
got a question about the window of
Yeah,
tolerance because um, the image that you made for me, I have a question about this because I guess as long as we are in between, in the, not hitting a boundary, it looks like we have ability to use our neocortex to think
yeah,
about things and to have all kind of beliefs and but as soon as you hit the boundary that there is going to be emotions involved
yeah. And friction.
and
Yeah,
if those are too much then we even go to our um, our really primary system.
true, true. So that's actually a really beautiful way of saying it. So both we need safety so that we can explore, so that we can always fall back. But if we created too thick walls on that channel,
Then there's no
then there's
emotional.
no room to explore either. Too thick walls means I created everything safe. I know exactly how I'm going to predict my life. That's actually the equivalent of moving to a deserted island on the South Pacific with your three best friends or however you want, and to make sure that nothing will ever be able to happen to you again. And even though that's safe, it's not how we explore life fully. So we need certain amount of safety, but we also need certain amount of space for exploration, for wonder, for awe, for God. We need both. So then if the pipeline is broken, the trauma vortex will come and get us with everything that happens. But if the pipe is too thick or the pipeline is too narrow, we also don't have a room for exploration. Most mindset trainings, even though they're beautiful, go about exploring the limits within the pipe or trying to fix the brokenness of the pipe. But what in reality we need to do is we need to create a different pipe. We need to create resources inside of ourselves, a different foundation inside of ourselves. I'm going to say that again, not outside of ourselves, but inside of our system, so that our window of tolerance changes dramatically, so that we're able to deal um, with such a deep level of emotions that the trauma vortex will have less of a pull. And when you explained in a few minutes ago, around a few years ago, that a broken text system would get you in that trauma vortex and you couldn't respond differently. And it felt like, well, this is who I am. This is not who I want to be. Um, and you got in that whole ramification, and every single person on this planet knows what that feels like in a different scenario, maybe, but we all know it. What you created over the years now is that you can still feel the trauma pull, but your foundation is in such a different place that it will not make you chop my head off or shoot yourself in the foot. Does that make sense?
Hmm. Yeah, yeah, I know that it's still there, and one thing is that at least I don't judge myself anymore so much for doing
Yeah.
something wrong, or something is going wrong. I'm too late, or I'm not doing what would be expected in the situation, and just be with it and know that that's also part of life, my life, or life in general, and that's so that even there are those emotions as rage or stress or fear, that I don't have to disappear fully.
Yeah, and the way you just put it, I love because you said it's part of life, but you used to say this is part of me.
Mhm.
So you shifted from this is who I am, and I need to defend myself because I need to understand this is who I am and I need to deal with this. And now it's part of life. And it's no longer part of Yakko who messes up. It's
Yeah.
part of life, and life can be hard.
Yeah, and I know that as a child, I'm certain I felt like making mistakes in front of my parents would be could be really dangerous. So I think the difference is that um, the emotions are the same, and even the stress is the same, but I'm sure I'm not in danger anymore. So
Yeah.
there's
But the interesting thing is, it's not just that you are sure, because I'm pretty sure you were not in danger 20 years ago as well, but your body knows it's not in danger. That's the big difference.
mm, yeah.
It's interesting. That brings me to a conversation that I'm having a lot with people who say, yeah, I know what I should be doing. I know what I should be saying. I know I'm safe. Well, apparently you don't, because if you fall into a rage explosion caused by trauma, shame rage explosion is what I call it. If you fall into that, then maybe you know the facts, but you don't know them on all levels there is to know. So, this is where we can easily get into judgments around, yeah, but I know it. Why can't I be different? Because I know it and I'm not doing it. It's also with to do lists, right? Yeah, but I know what I should be doing. I know I should call this person. I know I should just say these things and I'm not doing it. So, you see, proof that I'm stupid, or proof that I'm lazy, or we call it procrastination, or we call it a pattern that we need to fix. The problem is that we don't know. There's only a small part of us that knows.
Mm.
But
It's
if we would,
it's the cognitive thing, but
yes,
that switches off as soon as there's something
yeah.
triggered. Yeah.
And it's helpful to realize that apparently there is a level that we know something else. Apparently, there is a level still active inside of us where we know that we're not safe. Now, that might not be true in the moment, but acknowledging, wow, there's a level inside of me that knows it's not safe right now is actually step one. Because if we start to bully ourselves, this is why, by the way, why we can't get out of trauma on our own, because the system is producing the problem, not the environment. Your computer is not bullying you, even though you might think
I'm sure it
that.
is.
Exactly. Your computer is not personally against you, or the other person is often not personally against us. And we might know that, but by acknowledging, ah, my system is producing these emotions right now. So my mind, who's producing it, can never be the thing that will get me out of here, is actually why we need help when it comes to trauma. We cannot fix our nervous system with the nervous system that is creating the problem. On the other hand, and this is why it's so complicated, what Jakko is describing is a system that has been trained to be made wrong in connection with other people. So it happens in connection. Connection is the only thing that can get you through because your system is causing the problem and your system is shutting out everybody because it feels endangered by other people. How did you open up to letting other people in?
Mm, yeah, that's a good question because I did a lot of things, and um, there were a lot of people where I had trainings or coachings, and some of them were really that safe, that open to just listen and to be there, that I really, even if there was shame, I could share and I could keep the connection, even with shame going on while there was connection. And there were not that many people where it was possible, I guess. Um, but I can see that, or at least I think that that's really was helping,
The
because it's,
antidote,
I guess it's really something you have to practice and to have to experience several times at least to make a step to come in another place. And
and there's a condition to that because the antidote to shame is connection and love. The problem is that a lot of people are very willing to connect with you from a loving place, telling you that what you did wasn't so bad, that there's not a real problem, that, hey, you know what? It's not about you. You can do this. It's no problem if you can't do it. And they're trying to fix the scenario or fix your feelings about it. And when it comes to shame, that's the last type of connection that's going to be helpful. Because for some reason, not for some reason, but on a deep layer, that's what I wanted to say, on a deep layer, it's actually telling that part of you that feels awful, yeah, you know what? But you don't need to feel that way. Well, maybe I don't need to feel that way, but I am feeling that way. Yeah, but there's no reason for you to feel that way. So if somebody tries to fix it, then again, you're hearing or your system is hearing what you're feeling is wrong. So you won't really get out of it. And then you'll just try to polish yourself a little bit up, saying, oh, you know what? And actually, it re traumatizes. What we need in those moments, and this is where what you just said is very accurate. There were only a few people who could be there. True.
yeah,
It's very
and
true.
and especially with shame as a uh, trigger, then um, yeah, there are stories that I don't want to share, even if someone is willing to listen, because they're too painful. So it has to be really, really safe before
Yeah.
those stories can come up, or those moments or situations to share. And so yeah,
Yeah. And
it
that's
takes a lot already. And then if yeah, if the situation isn't safe enough, even the other person thinks that it's safe, but if it's not safe, I don't come up with those stories. And maybe in more in general, if I would share them, people would say, oh, but that isn't that bad, that this is not really a big thing. for me. But yeah, for me it is. And so it's really opening up to somebody is already a big step. But then with really shameful, the most shameful things,
Yeah.
it's
And it's interesting because it's not about the story or about the content. It's about the feelings in your body while you are telling it. It it can't be safe because somebody says, "Oh, but it's safe with me." No, I can hold space for you. If somebody tells me I can hold space for you, I'm out. I'm not sharing anything anymore because I don't need anybody to hold space for me. I need somebody to be in a completely undefended state where they can manage their own emotions no matter what it's triggering in them, without any intention of holding space, without any intention of anything needing to happen, without any idea, because maybe they won't be able to hold it, or maybe they won't understand what I'm talking about, or maybe they can't relate to the severity of what I'm feeling. Um, but if so, the safety doesn't come from somebody deciding it's going to be safe. It comes from our nervous system understanding that it's safe, our nervous system understanding that we're safe to take care of us instead of to take care of other people's nervous system around us. Am I making sense?
I think that it asks for, like you call it, the independent state. And I guess there are not that much people who really experienced as a child this independent state of their parents. So I think it can be really a unique experience for people if it's there. It's
Yeah.
it's it's so rare that it's so. If I just hear stories or see situations, and I see how children cannot really um, be certain that the parent is coming just from love and not minding other things at the same time, or really be open, or don't want to manipulate in a way, or yeah.
Yeah, just in those words, right? When it comes to communication, um, really be open. And then the question is, open to what even, right? Because it's not to be open to listen to the child, it's to be open to deal with anything that triggers inside of them. Can they be open to feel whatever they're feeling and taking care of that? It is open to being in the present moment, not knowing what that will ask from us. It's interesting because there's a story that comes to mind. I was just preparing, we're having a trauma seminar this week here. Um, and I was preparing and I thought, how can I explain this best? And I use stories from the Old Testament a lot to explain things because they're so clear and so ingrained in our system. And I came up with the story of the binding of Isaac, where Abraham, our archfather, offers his son Isaac as a sacrifice to God. And the interesting thing is that a lot of people think that was a test of his faith. But we can also say, and this is beautiful, that was a test of his willingness to say yes, not knowing the consequences, and trusting fully in life, in knowing that life is here for us, knowing that God had absolutely no intention to make anything bad happen, and to trust fully and say yes. And there is, of course, we only have 5 minutes left, but it's beautiful to think about, are we willing to say yes? In Hebrew, that's the word hineni, which I use a lot. And hineni means I'm ready or I'm here, but it also means I'm ready to be seen. And when it comes to the kind of trauma in conversations and in communication that we're talking about now, is are you willing to say, I am ready to be seen, not knowing all the consequences, willing to pause, willing to navigate whatever comes up and willing to be present when I can't? And am I willing to be that present with somebody else when that might trigger the other person?
Yeah, I guess, but I guess that there are a lot of steps in between before someone is able to say I'm ready, as there's still a need for knowing that you're safe, and so you have to meet
This is
safety.
interesting. Now we're getting to the core. I think we have 4 minutes left. Now we're getting to the core because this is what we often say in society, where we say, but I need to be ready before I can take action. I need to understand how safe I am before I can do something. And in any means, trusting the safety that you already have. It means trusting that there is safety inside of you and using that, and not waiting for something bigger to be there before you say yes, but trusting your yes, knowing that it will create deeper levels of safety, or saying yes to the safety that you already feel. So shifting from focusing on, I need bigger safety, I need to create certainty outside of us, trusting the certainty that you have. Does that make sense?
Yeah, but if I look to my own development, I can see that now I can consider it saying I'm ready, but don't you did you shouldn't ask me that 20 years ago,
No,
because
that's right. That's
I
right.
was not safe enough.
Oh my
There was
goodness.
no, I couldn't find safety in here.
No, no. So the first hunt is for the safety that's there. It's beautiful. I see a question here from the audience. Abel says, in my opinion, what's the position or decision in the face of good or bad situations? Ah, so what I would say is the decision in a bad situation is to pause and to tune in to where am I. So to pause in the moment of disruption, pause, hit a pause button, go to the bathroom, step out of the room, and then feel into the places inside of your body that are actually feeling good, and allow the not good parts of your body to just shake a little bit, tremble, feel. So don't go into the rage storm, because if you think, now I need to scream, now I need to go into a rage room, even though that can feel like a beautiful thing, you'll just fuel the rage storm, the trauma vortex. You don't want to be fueling the trauma vortex. What you want to do is you want to hit pause, tune into resources so that the little bit of trauma vortex that was triggered, that you can let that seep out a little bit, and that you can build on the resources that you have. That is the most counterintuitive thing to do, but that is the one thing that will get these channels bigger, because then you are fueling resources into the trauma vortex, instead of that you're allowing the trauma vortex to pull you out of your resources. I don't have a lot of time to go into it right now, Abel, but if you're still here, let us know if that was helpful. We're getting to the end of the show. We had 5 minutes, but I don't know if that was 5 minutes ago already or if we still have 2 minutes. Jakko, what are your final remarks?
Yeah, I'm still wondering how this relates to the window of tolerance. If you say, okay, you have to pause and see which um, safe resources I have. So if I see I hit the boundary or cross the boundary, am I still able to find this
Well,
place in me to find resources? So, but that's not for now, because that's, I
no,
guess maybe we can go in
we can
another
we
session.
can go deeper into that in another session. Yes, you will be, but you won't be able to get here on your own. This is where we need to surround ourselves with people who have that in place because our nervous system needs to learn and it cannot do that on its own. So we need people around us who are better at this, who will train us, not because they have the intention to train us, but because their nervous system is wired in a different way. So um, this is where the work that we teach comes to place. Thank you so much. Um,
You.
we have 1 minute left, so I'm going to end the show saying, guys, thank you so much for listening. If you have any questions, send them to us through a message on LinkedIn or on Facebook or on Instagram, or commenting underneath this show. This show can also be heard on the Spanglish Radio Network. Please check out http spanglishworld.ca for all the news and programming. Spanglish World. Watch it, hear it, read it, download it, live it. And if you want to follow us, hit the follow button on your Spotify app or wherever Spanglish is, and tune in next week with a new episode where Jakko and I will be talking about another topic all around trauma. Um, Follow us, ask us questions so that we can talk about that in depth. Bye.